Hello everyone, I'm Tosca Di Matteo, founder of Tosca Coaching and Consulting, and welcome to Feisty on Friday. This is a series that I started in 2020 and here I am continuing now. So Feisty on Friday is a platform that I developed in order to kind of share my thoughts of the week, to share what came up for me, either, kind of in my life, in working with clients, in culture, not with the intention of complaining, but more with the intention of taking those feelings and thoughts and offering ideas to serve. So I just want to kind of introduce this platform. Hi Maru, thank you for joining us all the way from Cartagena. It's beautiful to have you in this space. And today's topic, right? I mean, obviously so much happened this week that there's just a lot of different arenas. But I think it may wander a little bit, but I think really at the end of the day, really what I want to talk about is speaking truth to power. I really look at what happened in the United States of America this week as being representative of all kinds of different institutions and organizations, representative of what happens within microcultures, corporate cultures, and really what happens, what can happen, the potential for what happens when we don't speak truth to power. And when we are operating in toxic environments that go unaddressed. So some of the things that have me really feisty really is when people are operating out of politics versus principle or versus values. And I certainly saw this in many organizations that I've worked in, where you have leadership that is focused on their power, keeping it and maintaining it, and what happens is, I think that people in positions where they're overseeing teams, other people, we have to be very careful about who we put in those positions and what their motivations are. And when it's really driven by ego and not service, we have to be very careful. Because what then happens is people who don't have a service mindset, people who don't have a belief that they have a responsibility when they are operating and have to take care of a body of people, employees, whoever, then we can really be in a dangerous situation because they really shouldn't be in power. If they are not there to serve, if that is not their number one focus, we got to find somebody better. And so when we look at our plans for leadership succession, we have to be thinking about these things. We can't think about it in terms of what has somebody accomplished and that's who we need. We need somebody who has just ticked these boxes of driving the sales or getting X done or getting Y done. Because what we do when we only focus on that is we're not focusing on the how. And we're not focusing on, well, now their job is actually going to involve so much more than just actually getting things done. It's going to involve creating culture. It's going to involve impacting other people. And so we have to put a real fine lens on who we decide is right for leadership positions and really start to measure it differently. Really start to assess candidates differently. So that's kind of one piece. I think that, we look at it historically, individual contributors are often put into roles of leadership or management because they proved, they could do that job. But that doesn't mean that they're going to be a good leader. It doesn't mean that we really want them in charge of other people's lives. Not in charge, but you know what I mean, leading other people. I think this week also brings up, I mentioned, right, speaking truth to power. This is so important. This is such a principle I believe in, that we have to question those in power when we see things that are not right. And I believe that part of the formula, part of the equation of that, is that we have to be clear in ourselves, that we have to be doing our own self-work, so that we can have the confidence to stand in our truth and speak truth to power. And that's why I believe so passionately that, you know, when we heal ourselves, we can heal the world. Because when we heal ourselves, we find an inner strength. We own our superpowers more. We own our truth more. We're more willing to use our voice for good, for the good of all. So, you know, for those of you who, you know, don't know if you want to be investing your time and energy and financial resources into healing yourself, let this be a call to action for you to put that on the top of your list. Because if we want to stop seeing things like we saw this week, abuses of power, white supremacy, et cetera, then we have to be willing to be our best selves and do whatever it takes to do that, so that we can be a part of the light and a part of the solutions. And I think a lot of times, you know, especially when we're evaluating, right, our financial means with what our priorities are, you know, we often look at, I think we can look at our own personal development at the bottom of the list of importance. And I urge you to think differently about that, to say, like, if we want a different world to live in, if we want to stop these atrocities, we have to first look at ourselves and be willing to do the work, be willing to invest in ourselves so that we can be a part of the solution, and not contributing to the challenges. You know, we saw what it means to have double standards. We saw what white supremacy looks like in so many ways in this past week. And I think that, you know, it's such a big stage that we're seeing that on, right? With such huge stakes, and the fact that we got lucky in terms of the implications of what happened this week. And I think what we have to do is we have to then take a look at our environments and say, where are there double standards and where is white supremacy showing up in my world? Maybe it's my inner world, maybe it's my external world, my immediate environment, within the family, within my organization, what have you. And not just point and say, oh, it's happening there. Well, trust, it's happening everywhere. And so, you know, if you want to do something, you know, if you're furious and you're angry and you're sad or whatever you're feeling, but if you want to take it to action, the way to take it to action is to look at the world in which you are operating in day to day and see what is there for you to address. Quite frankly, you know, and I'm not, you know, I'm not exempt from that. You know, I examine my thoughts and my feelings, and understand, you know, try to understand where that's coming from and what I want to be different and what I want to unlearn, and learn anew, so that I don't perpetuate these things that I'm talking about, not perpetuating. I think that, you know, some might feel like, oh, there was an awakening, you know. Some people like, it finally clicked that, you know, that there was some real evil going on. I'd like to believe that, but I don't think that's what happened. I think what happened was people decided that, oh, when somebody is now politically dead, then it doesn't make any more sense to like align with them. I think it was still very, maybe this is a cynic in me, but I think it was still very ego driven and self, importance driven and just based in what is going to serve the individual in that moment. Because trust me, it didn't take yesterday to have an awakening about what the hell's been going on. But what I say this to say that I think that because thoughts and behaviors and actions have been happening for so long, they're toxic, that we push so much of it under the rug to just accept that this is the way it is. And what we have to do is we have to have our own awakenings in our own lives, in our own environments, and in our workplaces to say, what is actually going on that's toxic here? We have to awaken to that in our microcosms, because that is the daily work. That is the work that is going to, I think, unravel the world that we live in so that we can create a new one, So again, you want to move into do mode. You want to move into action mode. Really start assessing what is toxic in your life right now that maybe you've been sweeping under the rug. You haven't really wanted to acknowledge. And I think part of this, we can really easily get into this place of, well, it hasn't been that bad. So yeah, it hasn't gotten to that point. I think there are still some people rationalizing that with what happened this week. It's like, oh, well, only X number of people died, so we don't really have to kick him out of office. Are you fucking kidding me? What's it really going to take to say 12 days, 11 days, 10 days, 8 days, 4 days is still too much for this person to be in power, and look, we're talking about actual lives being lost directly contributed to this action. We're also talking about psychological trauma, physical trauma that's happened, and these implications are also seen in other environments, like corporations, like organizations, institutions. And so it is not a matter that I think anybody should be taking lightly. Because first of all, yes, the implication can also lead to loss of life. It can lead to things like suicide. It can lead to things like depression. It can lead to things like shaving years off of your life because of a toxic environment that people are continuing to swallow and be in. So I don't think the stakes are any lower. And even though maybe the time horizon, right, is not immediate, but we have to acknowledge that the implications are severe, and that toxic environments, whether it's within our families or whether it's within the organizations that we serve or the institutions that we're a part of, we don't have time to waste to stand up to power and address these issues. So I think part of doing that, of standing up to power, is to lead with your values rather than succumb to the fear. And I think a lot of what we've seen and how people have behaved in the past 4 years are operating from a place of fear, and scarcity mindset. And I think that's what is a big part of what holds people back, whether that's, not going after the promotion, not going after the job, not quitting your job and pursuing your life's passion. I think a lot of the reasons for that come down to fear in a number of different realms. But then what happens is, the toxicity can continue in our lives because we are so bound up in fear. And part of healing ourselves and part of doing our own inner work that I talked about earlier is about addressing the fear that is a huge obstacle to living the life that we want to live and to operating in integrity, and to not being in dissonance with ourselves, because we're honoring our truth by taking action. Honoring your truth in your head isn't going to do it. Doing it through action is what will bring you that inner peace that you may be looking for. I think that another concept that comes to mind this week is that the truth matters. and it's been said. Let me say it again. That when we bury the truth, when we spin stories, when we mask the truth, all of those things, right? I think we get ourselves into trouble. And that ranges from, if you're a marketer and you're spinning a customer data to look a certain way because you want to save face or something in front of a boss, like I'm talking about that too, because it'll come back and bite you in the ass if you're not just honest about the data and the reality. And what happens when we do that is we do a disservice. We do a disservice to everybody we serve. We do a disservice to ourselves. And we have to be active truth seekers. We have to be active truth seekers in communication, in problem solving, or we're just living a lie. And what good does that do anybody? We can easily take things at face value from people that we respect or admire. But we don't have the luxury of doing that and not asking ourselves the question. We have to ask the questions. We have to ask where the information come from. We have to ask about our sources. We have to pressure test, and I don't care where you are in an organization or where you are in the world, you have a right to get underneath what you're being told so that you can be a truth seeker yourself. And if you're in environments that don't support that, well then it's not the right environment. And until we start to take the risks of making different choices and moving away from those places that do not seek the truth, it's hard for them to change because they're still going to have the people there that are willing to feed the lies, And then I think that just gets to the meta idea of how do we really institute change in the world and in our environments. We have to be willing to sacrifice. We have to be willing to take risks. We have to be willing to do the inner work that leads us to be able to do those things, because organizations won't thrive if people make the choice to leave, It just makes me think of, Rosa Parks and her choice and her willingness to take a risk, and all the people that made the sacrifice to change the way things were. To me, that's the kind of environment that we're in, that if we really want to see change, we have to make sacrifices. To me, it's just, if we keep rewarding a system the same way, we're going to get the same results. So we have to stop rewarding systems that are toxic. We have to stop rewarding people that are toxic. We have to stop playing into the thing that feeds these systems. So yeah, I think part of this journey is, I've talked about that, healing ourselves first is just number one to me, about how we start to, how we continue to erode systems that aren't working. We have to be brave in using our own voice. We have to be vulnerable in being the voice of dissent in environments that need that truth. And we need support. We need support in doing that. We need allies. And we need to learn how to use language so that we can be effective in the change that we're looking to make. And we have to be aware of what is ego-driven, not only in ourselves, but in others. And there's a million different ways to start the work in these areas. But I think these are some of the key things that we need. And the thing that pops out for me is the idea of support, because it can be a lonely and hard place to be a voice of dissent and be the only one. And sometimes that's what's necessary to create the domino effect. But we can also harness support from others and actually ask for what we need and find allies and know who stands up for us and with us. And that's, that's the daily grind of change, is recognizing what it is that you want to do, how you want to contribute, and doing it in a way that can garner support for forward progress. You don't have to do it alone. I don't think it's ever truly done alone. One voice matters, and you don't have to do it alone. So this might be, one of my more somber, feisty on Fridays, but this is just kind of the vibe that I'm in right now. It's one of these mixed emotion moments, WTF, also not surprise moments, but still disheartened and disgusted and all of that stuff. But we entered a new year, and it didn't start off warm and fuzzy. But you know what? There's also a lot that served us, and even this is serving us in a way. I think that unifying might become even more easy come January 20th, because there was a real common ground on value that was brought up that I think is helpful, and that is always how you unite. You find the common ground. So that's a silver lining. Yeah, clearly Stacey Abrams and the work she's done in Georgia, and the result there is something to be celebrated, to me. And so, the week started off with this, the light and the dark. And I, kind of made a post about that yesterday on my Instagram, that holding the light in the dark, making space for the light in the dark, really working through the feelings with the light and the dark is how we make forward progress. Hey Jessica, good to see you. Thanks for joining. I've been talking this whole time about just the environment today, but really the theme of speaking truth to power, and that it all starts with healing ourselves in order to do that work, to change the systems, and I think by nature, I'm an optimistic person, right? So I'm sitting here today and I'm like, woo, what a week, right? Not the ideal way to start a year. And I also feel like this is all part of what's needed, the darkness to continue to get unearthed so that the light can be shined, and we can fix what needs to be fixed. So that's kind of my take on this Feisty on Friday. That, be kind and gentle to yourselves this weekend. Do what you need to do for you. And I encourage you to identify what action can you take to be a part of the solution in your world, in your environments, so that we can detoxify, so that we can speak truth to power everywhere that it is being abused, everywhere that it is being taken advantage of. And so that we can stand up and be allies to those who are victims and being persecuted, and who are treated unfairly and inequitably, and all of that. That the work starts with ourselves, and it's not just the government. It's everybody playing their role to make the changes that we want to see. And I have no doubt that 2020 is gonna be a monumental year for the collective, for a we mentality, for moving from I to we in how we think and operate, how we make decisions. And then maybe it won't feel huge, but I think there will be a movement that hopefully we also feel this year. But I think that that's what's literally aligning in the stars, and I think that that's what we know that we need to live and be free in this world, is to look more at the collective and look out for each other. So anyway, that's my Feisty on Friday. Thank you for joining. And to learn more about me, you can visit me at toscadimateo.com. I'm also on YouTube and LinkedIn and in other social channels. So thanks for joining, and keep your head up, and have a great weekend. Ciao for now.